We are paid, that's all. We are God.
Hey guys! Another new series for today. This is what if Naruto woke up in a different Konoha. The day after a wild party to celebrate the end of the war against Madara, Naruto, the remaining Konoha 12, and some guests, can't help but wonder what happened last night as they wake up in a different Konoha. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 1. Come on, Naruto. Just a little further. Yelled a feminine voice. How come I have to do all the heavy lifting, Sakura? You're the one with the brutish strength. Naruto lamented as he pushed the sofa from one side of the living room to the other. Baka! Do you really think that's something to say to a girl? Shouted Sakura. Dobe, another voice interrupted before the pinkette could yell again. Why don't you just use your Kagebunshin? Let them do the manual labor. Naruto paused, blushing a bright red. Why didn't I think about that? Because you're still a moron. Shut up, Kurama. Naruto frowned, pointing an accusing finger at the last living Uchiha. Shut up, team. Don't talk like that when you've been sitting on the couch I've been pushing all along. I agreed to come here, not to help you, said Sasuke in an annoyed tone, his head resting on the couch's cushions. You weren't forced to come early, you know, muttered the blonde, pouting. Yes he was. And he has to help, chirped Sakura. Karen blackmailed him. What? Really? Asked Naruto as Sasuke turned his head away from his teammates. Yeah. She told me that if he didn't get himself here before the rest of the gang and actually help us, said Sakura with a conspiratory tone, he's going to sleep on the couch for a month. There was a long, tense moment of silence, which was interrupted when Naruto made a whipping sound, complete with a motion to accompany it. So, what's it gonna be, Sasuke? Are you going to help us, or will you just stay on my sofa to practice for a long, lonely month? The blonde Jinchuriki said, grinning evilly. Uchiha Sasuke, the last of his clan, former S-rank missing mean, then prisoner on probation and now restored a shinobi of Konoha with the rank of Tokubetsu Jonin, was mopping the floor of Naruto's living room. And Sakura was taking pictures with a camera. He had never felt so embarrassed in all his life. I really regret returning to the village now, he admitted, blushing a little. Oi! Sasuke! Don't say something like that. All the clones shouted in unison, moving various furnishings around. The stereo effect was impressive, even if some of the clones said team instead of Sasuke. The raven-haired boy raised a hand in a silencing gesture. Shut up, Naruto. As he said that, Naruto, the real one, was just passing near him, carrying a stack of boxes overflowing with scrolls and books. Naruto, what's with all the books? Naruto turned around to respond to him. Just a few of Fuinjutsu scrolls and tomes that I inherited from Ero Sennin. And all of his unfinished Ika novels. Taking one last picture of Sasuke, Sakura glared at Naruto, sending a cold shiver running down his spine. You better not start reading porn in public like Kakashi-sensei, Naruto. I would never do that. I'm only keeping them as a reminder of Ero Sennin, I swear. Said Naruto defensively. Yeah, right, muttered Sakura, who started to put the kitchen area in order. Never mind the smut books. Did you find anything good inside the scrolls? Asked Sasuke, getting curious. I don't know what they're about. I just got them yesterday. Haven't really had time to study them. Just yesterday. Really? Yeah, you know, after Ero Sennin's death. A sad expression settled on the blonde's face as he reminded the fate of the Toad Sage. I didn't have enough time to check and see if he left me something. Pain's invasion, training with B, the war, Madara, and what followed. Sasuke HN'd in understanding. I'm sure you'll able to do that now, Naruto. The blonde shinobi smiled and nodded before leaving him alone. After the end of the Fourth Shinobi War, the hardest part had been keeping the Shinobi Alliance alive. Without a common enemy threatening their survival, the old rivalries between the five great nations and their wilder subordinates had threatened to erupt once again. It had only been thanks to a carefully planned diplomatic gathering of all the leaders of the alliance, the Kages, the daimyos, and Naruto, that the peace had lasted. But the draft of an official, foolproof treaty had taken almost 1 year, as more small nations and hidden villages had asked to join. Naruto had returned definitively to Konoha only just a few days ago. Waiting for him, along with his friends and allies, was a shiny new apartment in one of the buildings constructed after Pain's invasion, completely furnished, as a payment for the mission of having ended the war. It was a very big apartment, with a very big living room. Big enough to fit a whole regular-sized apartment inside, and still have some space to spare. To celebrate his return, someone, he didn't know if it was Sakura or Ino, probably both, had suggested they throw a giant party. And Sasuke had to clean all of it. Without jutsus. Or his friends would tattle to Karen, and he wouldn't get any action for a month. Couldn't your teacher just give him a giant pile of money? The Uchiha asked Sakura, in an annoyed tone. The council wanted to do that, but it turns out we don't have enough money for a thanks for saving the world reward. So to prevent the village from going bankrupt, they offered him this instead. And he accepted. Sasuke resumed mopping the floor, muttering bitterly, how come we don't get a giant apartment? You are lucky enough that Killer B-san and Naruto persuaded the Raikage to not take your head. Now less talking, more cleaning. It's been a great day so far for the Hokage of the Hidden Leaf. No, scratch that. It's been a great year so far for the Hokage of the Hidden Leaf. The war was over long ago, thanks to him, a lot of people would say, calling him a hero, but he preferred being modest about that. He didn't want the glory and fame to go to his head. Just a few weeks ago, it was announced to the village that he was going to be their new Hokage. It had been his dream since childhood, to gain the title and be acknowledged by the village. Of course, he had gained the acknowledgement of the village long ago, before the war, but he was still able to finally crown his oldest aspiration. And it felt good. It felt really, really good. An evil little cackle escaped his lips as he relished that feeling. All right, maybe he was letting the glory and fame go to his head. Just a little bit. Bad Hokage, bad. But seriously, who could blame him? As a coronation of his lately successful life, yesterday he had finally summoned the courage to ask his girlfriend to marry him. And the girl, no, woman. When had that happened, he was in love with had said yes. She had actually said yes. And she had showed him her happiness in a very special way. Right before entering the Hokage Tower's office halls, he'd had to actually stop and get a grip of himself. After all, it would ruin his image in front of the employees if their leader was seen grinning like an idiot. Taking a deep breath, he opened the doors. He was immediately assaulted. Hokage-sama. Thank Kami and the log you're here. We need your signature on the papers for the enrollment of the new academy instructors, said an administrative shinobi as soon as he was spotted. Hokage-sama. Our mission office requires your authorization for 3 A-rank missions, 13 B-rank missions and 51 C-rank missions. We still haven't gathered all the D-rank missions files yet. Yelled an almost hysterical Chunin who was running around carrying a giant pile of folders and scrolls. Hokage-sama. Called another. He tuned out what the clerk was saying. It was probably something about some documents needing a stamp of approval, anyway. Hokage-sama. Pressed another. Hokage-sama. Inwardly, the blonde Hokage sighed. When he was a child and had decided that he would become the Hokage, he hadn't understood that the job was full of responsibilities, a lot of them tedious to boot. Seriously, it seemed like some people believed that if he didn't micromanage everything and make 2 or 3 copies, the village of Konoha would go bankrupt or something. The clerks of the office lounge seemed to believe that, at least. Still walking and looking straight in front of him, he just knew that if he actually met their eyes he would stop to help them. Damn his soft heart, he gave them his orders. Take all the documentation that need an approval seal, signature, or any other kind of authorization to my office. Just like every other day, he thought. I'll revise everything personally, and decide whether to approve the aforementioned papers or not. Like I do every other day. Seriously, do any of these bureaucrats actually know how we process these papers? They seem to go into a panic every time we have a sudden influx of documents. Hokage-sama, called the first Chunin that had spoken up. What about the mission reports? Crap. I forgot about those. What to do? What to do? Think fast, Blondie. Just add them to the pile. But since I have important decisions to make regarding other written requests, no debriefing in my office until this afternoon. He paused for a second. Unless it's an S-rank mission. After all, S-rank missions were of great importance to the village. He couldn't postpone a briefing for one just because he wanted to be lazy for a day. The desk jockey confirmed his order, scrolling down a list to check something. We seem to not have issued any S-rank missions as of late, Hokage-sama. Yes. No debriefings for this morning. Yet, concluded the Chunin, happily. Arg. I bet the bastard is just hoping for a S-rank to show up just to feast on the paperwork. This job is going to be the death of me, I just know it. Finally, he was alone in his office, admiring the view of the village from his window. Hee, my office. Still got to get used to saying that. Some of the good mood he'd had a few minutes ago returned for a little while, until he looked to his desk, covered by the bane of every Kage in every hidden village, or at least he hoped so, that had ever existed, paperwork. His eyes narrowing, he decided that it was time to apply his secret strategy. Those poor Chunin think I'll do all this work by myself, suckers. He pressed the intercom button, calling his secretary. Noriko, please don't let anyone in my office. If it's a matter of extreme importance, let me know, but don't let them in unless I say so, alright? Of course, Hokage-sama. Finishing this last detail of his evil plan, he formed a simple hand seal and muttered, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. With a poof of smoke, 3 clones appeared in the office, right beside him. Get to work, boys. The 3 gave him an annoyed look, and started ransacking the pile of paperwork, muttering something along the lines of, yes boss, slave driver, and sloth lazy Hokage. They could complain all they wanted, he would be merciless. The 3 of them had only been summoned to form an efficient, documents evaluating and approving / declining machine. As the clones processed the giant, dubbed not urgently requiring the Hokage's immediate attention, mountain of paper, he would dedicate his attention to the more important ones, which turned out to be only 2 scrolls. One from the Fire Daimyo, and one from Suna. Weird. Usually we find more important scrolls than this. Oh, well. Less work to do, he thought with a shrug. Thanks to the clones, he could concentrate all his attention on them, allowing more time to evaluate the letter and formulate the proper response to the daimyo's requests without offending the leader of Hai no Kuni, as well as consider any proposals the Kazekage may have sent to him. And once I've done that, I get to relax for the rest of the morning. And, done. The daimyo shall be quite pleased to receive this message. Don't you agree? He asked his clones. They stared at him, eyes filled with accusation and frustration, without pausing in their assigned task. What sullen looks. The worst part is that I'll actually remember being angry at myself once they dispel. That's a weird thought. He put the scroll with his response to the ruler of the land of fire in a safe container before reaching for the letter from Suna. What could the Kazekage want? Just as he'd touched the scroll, the door to his office opened with a bang. Startled by the sudden noise, the clones hid in the blink of an eye as someone barged in. It was one of their orders. Instead of dispelling, leaving a cloud of suspicious smoke that would have revealed his secret jutsu against paperwork, they would conceal their presence in the case of a sudden intrusion. Hokage-sama! Yelled the man who had just entered the office. Either an old Chunin or a young Jonin, he couldn't remember which rank the man was. Behind him, the Hokage could see his secretary poking her head through the open entrance. I'm sorry, Hokage-sama, but he just didn't stop. It's all right, Noriko, responded the blonde man. I'm sure he has a good reason. Right? He asked the Chunin / Jonin with a flat tone that caused the man to stand ramrod straight at attention. Yes, Hokage-sama. He said, looking very nervous. I was sent here by Uchiha-san to inform you of an urgent situation. The Hokage didn't say anything, waiting for the man to continue. Of course it was an emergency. He was pretty sure that if anyone sent a messenger to advise the Hokage even if he'd ordered to not be disturbed, it was for a pressing matter that the Hokage should know of as soon as possible. Instead, the messenger who just rushed inside his office paused, hesitating. Hokage-sama. Why is there a clone of yours hiding behind a plant? Turning his head, the blonde could see that, truly, there was one of his bushin hiding, badly, behind a potted plant just a few feet away. The clone at least had the decency to look embarrassed. Inwardly, he was too. It was his clone, after all. He's gathering intelligence, he deadpanned without hesitation, facing the messenger once again. Yes, of course, Hokage-sama. In the silence of the room, you could have heard a pin drop. So, the situation you have to report about? He asked, annoyed. Oh. Right. Clearing his throat, it was now the messenger's turn to look embarrassed. Uchiha-san sent me to inform you that, at a still unknown time this morning, building appeared inside Konoha's walls. Another moment of silence followed that phrase. A building appeared in Konoha? He had to ask that, because he wasn't sure if he had heard right. Yes, Hokage-sama. More or less in the southern district, sir. Are you sure that the emergency wasn't about something else? Pretty sure, sir. The building in question seems to have just materialized out of nowhere. Also, it's quite big. Uchiha-san and other shinobi on the scene confirmed that it's not a genjutsu. And, Hokage-sama, the man paused, uncertain to continue. Speak. He yelled, his patience wearing thin. You can see the building from your office window, Hokage-sama, the messenger finished with a whimper, pointing behind his leader with a trembling finger. What? The blonde Hokage thought, snapping his head to the window. It was true. He could see, in the distance, almost on the outskirts of the village, the outline of a building he's never seen before. He knew there were no construction sites in that part of the village, and buildings didn't just grow overnight. What is going on? They confirmed it's not a genjutsu, you said. How? He asked, without looking at the messenger. He rose from his seat, eyes never leaving Konoha's altered skyline. One Chunin tried to prove that it was a genjutsu by punching one of the walls, sir. He broke 3 fingers. What measures have been taken? Uchiha-san ordered the evacuation of the neighborhood where the building is located and established a security cordon around the location. Also he placed spotters and sentinels on the rooftops, but hasn't tried to inspect the interior of the building yet. He's requesting your presence. Sir. Good, good. I'll be going then. Dismissed. Searching for the chakra signature of one of the seals he had strategically placed around the village, Minato Namikaze was gone in a yellow flash. Chapter 2. Inside the top floor of one of the apartments surrounding what was, right now, the most discussed building of Konoha, was situated the temporal command outpost of the Konoha military police force. The location had been chosen because it granted a good strategic view onto the street in front of the mysterious building, and as such was perfect to coordinate their forces. Sir. Security perimeter complete. Nobody can enter or leave the area without us knowing, said the radio operator, speaking to his commanding officer who was standing a few feet away. Fugaku didn't know why that building was there. He didn't know how it was there. In his mind, those points didn't matter, at least for now. What concerned him was that the building just was. And someone had to have been able to put it there. Probably illegally. Even if the man responsible was not an enemy of Konoha, unlikely, but stranger things had happened in the shinobi world, they would have to answer for it. So he was going to treat the situation just like any other he had faced before. As a ninja, and as a cop. Good. What's the status of our sharpshooters? He asked. The operator immediately repeated his question on the radio. All in position, kunai, shuriken and senbon at hand. Asking for rules of engagement. They're authorized to throw on anyone who leaves the building. They must aim for non-vital points, and limbs. We want them alive. For now. We need answers. Speaking of which, he turned his attention to one of his men, who was sat on the floor in a meditative stance with his eyes closed. Masahiro, do you sense anything? Masahiro was one of the best sensor types in the Uchiha clan. He was able to discern quite a lot about a person's capabilities just by concentrating on their chakra. As such, he was a valuable asset against any unknown foe. No one is outside of the building. With the exception of our men, of course, Masahiro said in a neutral tone, opening his eyes. But I sense something inside. There are at least 12, maybe more people inside. No more than 20. I'm not sure. At that, Fugaku and everyone in the room blinked in surprise. You're not sure? He said, interrupting him. He didn't remember the last time that Masahiro hadn't been sure about what he was sensing, because it had never happened before. Ignoring the bewildered stares everyone was giving him, the sensor kept explaining. Whoever is inside that building, is not in their top condition. Their chakra signatures are erratic, and unstable. And very weak. I'm pretty sure that most of them are unconscious or indisposed. Once he finished, he closed his eyes again, concentrating his senses on the area of operation. Fugaku frowned, deep in thought. Unconscious. Maybe whatever jutsu they used backfired on them. Or maybe it's a trap to make us lower our guard. Also, said Masahiro, smiling and interrupting his thoughts, a group of very curious civilians is trying to pass through the security perimeter. Children and teenagers, from the looks of it. What? Barked Fugaku. Just what they needed. Civvies on the area of operations. He turned to the radio operator. Why has nobody stopped them? One of our sentries saw them just now, sir. I was going to inform you. The radio man responded quickly. She's asking for orders. Well, of course instead of stopping them and sending them away, since they're just children, she must arrest them. Fugaku said, his tone full of sarcasm. Did he really have to tell a sentry how to do her job? Sir, are you sure about that? Can't she just scold them? Before he could attempt to strangle the radio operator, what was his name? He had so many clansmen that he didn't remember all of their names. Sometimes, a banging racket exploded from the kitchen area. Turning, he saw yet another Uchiha messing with the pantry. Some food packages were scattered on the floor, the contents of some spurting out. What are you doing, Kimoto? He asked, gritting his teeth as he glared at his clumsy subordinate. The apartment's inhabitants were unhappy enough when they'd had to evacuate the facility along with the rest of the citizens. Fugaku was sure they would not praise the Uchiha clan when they found out that the police force had ransacked and destroyed their food. Kimoto just raised a coffee maker, no doubt acquired from another point of the kitchen, pointing at it with one of his fingers. I was looking for the coffee, sir. Black and without sugar for me, Fugaku said without hesitation, forcing himself to calm down. Screw the civilians. I need some coffee after all this shit so early in the morning. 2 spoons of sugar, for me, said Masahiro, keeping his eyes still closed. The still unnamed radio operator spoke again, but not to say something about his coffee. Sir, our squad leaders are reporting in. They've arrived at their assigned positions, ready to storm the building at any time. Good. Tell them to stand by. The door of the apartment opened, pushed by another shinobi of the military police. Sir, someone has arrived to see you. Oh, good. The Hokage has arrived. It's not Hokage-sama, sir, said the newcomer, with an almost regretful tone. Then who is it? Asked Fugaku, annoyed. Us, said a voice he knew well, as 2 people entered the room. Oh, great. Them. This is going to be one of those days. Minato teleported himself the closest he could to his destination using the Hirashin no Jutsu. He had placed various copies of the seal in hidden spots all around Konoha in an array he had planned with the Sandaime during Sarutobi's last years of reign over the village, as a defensive strategy in case of any crisis. Well, there was also the one inside Kushina's house, but that was his and the redhead's little secret. Still, he appeared a long way from the building location. He darted across the rooftops, giving himself a small chakra boost to jump over the larger streets, filled with people starting their morning routines. He was sure that the news about the building's appearance would be all over Konoha soon, if it wasn't already. Sometimes the village's inhabitants, civilians and shinobi alike, would gossip more than an old wives' circle during tea time. It could not be helped, though. Before thinking about the theories circulating in the village rumor mill and give an explanation about what happened, he needed to know what and how it happened. Knowing also who is responsible would be nice. He had almost arrived and could see it clearly now. The building, as he was starting to call it, was a large apartment complex, 5 stories high with peach-colored walls. Lots of windows, too. And some nice balconies. Seemed like a nice place, actually. The most disturbing fact was not that it didn't exist yesterday. The most disturbing fact was that the building seemed to have merged with the 2 that were present at the location before its appearance. Minato could clearly see the points where the peach walls met the differently colored ones. It looked like the trio of apartments were stuck together, like 2 different sets of construction blocks that didn't properly match. He could see the members of the military police lined up on the street right under him, holding a small mob of curious onlookers back firmly. He landed right between them and the Uchiha policeman, and asked an officer to take him to Fugaku. Sure, he could have shunshined directly inside the security cordon and found Fugaku himself, but going through the proper protocol would have helped keep the Uchiha clan head satisfied of his position and the standing of his clansmen. The Uchiha were becoming a little too touchy and paranoid, in his opinion. Note to self, improve the Uchiha's integration with the village. Also, the people of Konoha needed to know that their Hokage who had sworn to protect them was there ready to face, whatever this was. A little show for the public could really help the villagers' morale so that they would not go in a panic in case of. In case of what? In case the building wakes up and attacks us, he thought as the policeman escorted him, the people cheering a little due to his arrival. The Yondaime was accompanied to the military police temporary HQ, or, as it was known until half an hour ago, the Aserawa's residence. Inside the small apartment, did he smell coffee? He was greeted by a strange scene. Right in the middle of the room, Fugaku Uchiha and the masked figure of the Anbu commander were staring at each other, frowning. Well, Fugaku was frowning. He supposed that the commander was, too. Difficult to say, with the white mask covering his face. But it was a well-known fact that the two corps, and commanders, were long-time rivals. They were so concentrated on their staring contest that they didn't even notice their leader's presence. Beside him at the entrance stood Shikaka Nara, the recently appointed Jonin commander. He was staring at the two men with a bored expression, but acknowledged Minato's presence with a polite nod. The rest of the room was occupied by an Uchiha sitting on the floor in the lotus position, another Uchiha sitting next to a radio set, trying to calm down his commanding officer with gestures that kept being ignored, and yet another Uchiha who was standing in the kitchen area, seemingly oblivious to the scattered food at his feet and completely concentrated on a coffee pot. Oh, there's the coffee I was smelling before. He felt in the mood for a good cup, right now. Maybe with some cream. His reflections on coffee were interrupted by the angry voice of Fugaku Uchiha, still oblivious of the Hokage's presence. For the last time, the military police has this covered. Your presence is not required, Commander. This is a potential threat to Konoha. If it is an external aggression, the Anbu are required on the scene. Responded the Anbu's leader muffled voice in a similar tone. Hokage-sama, we thank you for joining us, greeted Shikaka Nara, a little louder than necessary to reprimand the two officers. High-ranking shinobi bickering like children about something like this were just too troublesome. If the two of them were ashamed of their conduct, they didn't show it as they greeted the Hokage themselves. Especially the Anbu commander. Those masks were great at concealing the emotions of their wearers. No wonder the Anbu were forbidden to play poker night with the normal jonin after the last one-sided tournament. Report, said Minato. The building is completely surrounded. The inhabitants of the absorbed buildings have all been evacuated, Fugaku began in a professional tone. Our sharpshooters are in position, ready to strike in case someone gets out of the building. We have confirmed at least 12 presences of unknown affiliation inside. Our best sensor, his eyes shifted for a second on the seated form of Masahiro. Affirmed that they don't seem to be conscious. Finally, our assault squads are ready to enter the building at any time. If we act fast, we can get them without too much trouble. At that, the Anbu commander snorted. Or at least made what could be considered a snort for the silent Black Ops Corps. Something on your mind, Commander? Asked Fugaku with a falsely polite tone. Your military police force is not trained to fight against unknown odds in an enclosed and narrow environment, such as in this case. Anbu are, among other things. My teams should storm the building, not yours. Like hell. We don't need you white-masked faces meddling with my operation and, enough, thundered the Yondaime. You are not a pair of academy students. You are among the best of Konoha, veterans of wars and seasoned professionals. Act like it. A moment of silence followed. This time, both the officers looked embarrassed by their own conduct, but refused to make eye contact as they bowed their head in shame. Your coffee is ready, sir. Nara-san, Commander-san, Hokage-sama. How would you like it made? Called the coffee-making Uchiha, completely breaking the tense atmosphere. 1 sugar for me. And milk. Said the Anbu. A few minutes later, the 4 men were sipping their coffee as the Uchiha minions were forced to put another batch on the flame. Hokage-sama, may I speak? Asked the Nara clan head, observing his black-as-night beverage. As per Minato's consenting nod, he kept speaking, opening one of the folders present on the dinner table. To put it simply, we don't have an explanation for the building's sudden appearance. Yet. The first witnesses were the inhabitants of the absorbed apartments. Standing by these reports, he gestured to the documents inside the folder. They just woke up to discover that part of their abodes had been replaced with peach walls. They immediately raised the alarm, at which the police force responded with their usual professionalism, he said gesturing to Fugaku who nodded in gratitude. All of them are accounted for, so we shouldn't expect any hostage situation. Before continuing he took a sip of his coffee, allowing that to sink into everyone's mind. While if this was a normal context the matter would be handled by the Konoha military police force alone, this is a bizarre and unknown situation. Anbu's expertise could be helpful, since they're trained to face unknown odds. And finally, I would like to remind you that if the occupants of the building should prove to be hostile, they're already inside the village walls. Our only advantage is that, apparently, whatever means they used to arrive here knocked them out, maybe even wounded them. But should this not be true, the village could be in danger if any fights escalate. Please, Shikaku. Stop playing with us and tell us what you have in mind, Minato said, wishing to get to the point. Shikaku emptied his cup with one last gulp. Hokage-sama. Fugaku-san. Commander-san. I, as the Jonin commander of Konoha, ask the start of a joint operation among all Konoha main forces. Fugaku's eyes, and the Anbu's too, but no one noticed, widened upon hearing this. Usually a joint operation was issued during a time of war or a great crisis, when different objectives otherwise unreachable had to be accomplished for Konoha's security. The Nara would never suggest something like this without a serious reason. The blonde and the pineapple-haired men stared at each other for a while, a silent conversation going on through their eyes. Request granted, the yondaime finally said. I assume you already have a plan. You assume correctly, Hokage, said the Nara with a smirk as he moved some folders to make space on the table. Shikaku made the hand seals for his family jutsu and his shadow expanded on the table he just liberated. Everyone's eyebrows raised at that, even the Anbu's, until he started to manipulate his shadow, molding it to create a three-dimensional map of the immediate area on the table. The precision and ease of reading was astonishing. Once again Minato was impressed by the Nara's eidetic memory. I suggest we keep using this location as a HQ to coordinate our forces. As Shikaku spoke, a blot of shadow rose from the map. We don't know the building's interior design, but judging by the windows we can estimate the dimension of the rooms. Before breaking in, we need more information. This is where the Anbu come in. At that, the commander's attention perked up. Anbu are specialized in black ops, usually with a great specialty in infiltration. So we are going to send 3 scout teams composed of a trio of Anbu each, who will advance undetected and report by radio a simple blueprint, and if possible gain intel on the occupants. Masahiro-san, can you pinpoint their location inside the building? He asked the censornin who was still sitting on the floor. The majority of them seem to be on the last floor. But there are some pairs or even isolated ones on other floors, with the exception of the ground floor. I can show you later on if you want, answered the Uchiha. Good, then our Anbu team's entry points will be the enemy, potential enemy-free areas. Fugaku-san. It was the Uchiha clan head's turn to become more attentive. As the Anbu give us intelligence on the building's interior, your teams will get in position. I assume your squads are equipped with riot gear. How many of them are ready? We have 5 4-man riot teams ready to engage, answered the police chief. That's good. When the time comes, they'll breach the building, and with the Anbu's support, they'll capture the targets and secure the area. As he said that, more shadow blots formed and converged on the building's form and they will support each other, right? The 2 core leaders mumbled something that resembled a yes. That was good enough for him. After that, the torture and interrogation section will give us answers. Finished Shikaku. Leaning on the map, Minato raised an eyebrow. You asked for a joint operation, Nara-san. What about your forces? I was getting to that. As he said that, the shadow map warped once again, showing a view of all Konoha. In case we can't finish this quickly and our targets reveal themselves to be hostile, the forces on the security perimeter will have to contain the menace. To avoid panic among the civilians, teams of Chunin led by a Jonin will be deployed all over the village to keep order and intercept eventual runaways, should the targets pass over the perimeter. As he said that, he dispelled the jutsu. It had probably been a waste of chakra, but he was of the idea that to make a point sometimes you had to be a little theatrical. I agree to this plan, Fugaku finally said, albeit a little forcefully. I agree as well, conceded the commander. But I wish to make a change to the plan. A change? Asked Minato. Damn it. I hoped they would just be satisfied with Shikaku's plan, he thought. Nothing major, I assure you, Hokage-sama. I just asked to make one of the scout teams a solo mission. Are you sure? This time, Minato's eyebrows almost reached his hairline. If he gets caught, he could find himself without support. Don't worry, Hokage-sama. He will not get caught. He's the best infiltration specialist in Anbu, maybe even the best in the village. Wait, are you talking about that Anbu? Yes sir, confirmed the commander with a smug tone. Granted then. Shikaku, how much time before the Jonin-led teams will be ready? Asked Minato. If we give the orders now, I think, 15 minutes tops. But we'll need more personnel and equipment to coordinate our operations, the Jonin commander responded thoughtfully. Do it, then. The temporary headquarters were now full of people, communication equipment, and coffee mugs. It was a total mess. The Arsawa family was going to be pissed about that, Minato just knew it. Oh well. He could just tell them that it was for the good of Konoha. He was the Hokage, after all. He was standing beside Shikaku, watching as Fugaku and the Anbu commander discussed strategies and checked over the last parts of the plan. You formulated that plan before I even arrived here. Didn't you, Shikaku? The Nara just smiled, not looking the Hokage in the face. I don't know what you're talking about, Yondim-sama. I just planned the most efficient way to accomplish our objectives. And the fact that those two may learn something by being efficient for the village's sake never crossed your brilliant mind? I'm just an humble tactical genius, Minato. I don't make miracles. Chapter 3. 4 teenagers were walking around the streets Konoha's marked district. But instead of just hanging out like normal teenagers, they were walking in a tactical formation and executing their orders with a professional demeanor. Or at least, that was what Hatake Kakashi, their Jonin leader, had hoped for when he started the assignment. The orders for the joint operation had arrived without any forewarning, so the teams were hastily assembled with the first elements available, which of course caused Kakashi to be in his current predicament. Woh! Thundered a voice behind him. If I am not able to maintain order in the village, I'll run 500 laps around the walls. And should I not be able to do that, I'll climb the Hokage mountain using only my hands in less than 5 minutes. And should I fail to do that, I'll start over again using only my teeth. Kakashi groaned as the green-clad Chunin, Mato guy, shouted his resolve at the top of his lungs, doing poses that the taijutsu enthusiast considered youthful. Whatever that meant. He watched his other 2 temporary subordinates, hoping to find their support in calming down the boisterous Chunin. His hopes were utterly crushed, as Sarutobi Asuma and Yuhi Kurenai were too busy looking at each other when the other was not watching and blushing faintly when doing so, apparently undisturbed by the big-browed boy's antics. It was almost painful to watch. He didn't particularly care, but he remembered that Obito and Rin had once made a bet about how much years would it take for the oblivious Chunins to confess to each other. That thought brought to his mind the more painful memories about his former teammates. He involuntarily reached for his Sharingan eye, covered by his forehead protector, as pangs of guilt stabbed his conscience. Mission, he thought, concentrate on the mission. Feel guilty later. Guy, calm down. You're scaring the civilians, he said with a bored tone. Actually, most of the civilians were just annoyed by all the shouting, especially this early in the morning. Guy had started making a reputation for himself as a strange guy, so the number of people scared by his presence and explosive enthusiasm was growing thinner by each passing day. He was still oblivious about it though, so it was still a good excuse for shutting him up. You're right, of course, my eternal rival. Not everyone is ready to admire the greatness of the flames of youth, Guy said, suddenly serious. I shall tone down my explosions of youthfulness, or I'll keep doing this mission walking only on my hands. He shouted, exuberant as before and already failing his self-imposed challenge. Whatever. Let's keep patrolling. Back at the HQ, the joint operation was ready to start. Minato, Fugaku, the commander and Shikaku were in the center of the room, surrounded by radio operatives and tech personnel. Masahiro was sitting in the exact same spot as before. The only difference was that now he was wearing a communication headset. Everything in order, sir. We should have audio feed any second now, shouted a police force techie. Very well, nodded Fugaku. Hokage-sama, may I? Yes, commence the operation, nodded Minato. Fugaku pressed a button on the radio in front of him, and getting closer to the microphone, started the necessary radio checks. All teams, report in. Even the ANBU ones, he added quickly. Flame team standing by. We're at our entry point. Blaze team, standing by. We just reached our designed position. Blast team, reporting. Ready and waiting. Fire team. Waiting orders. Fire team, what they said. Fugaku frowned a little at the last squad leader's lack of professionalism, but said nothing. Good, that's the police force riot teams, thought Minato, reviewing the deployment in his mind as the squad leaders confirmed to be ready. Senbon 1. No movement visible inside the building, as the sensor said. Senbon 2. Moving to a better vantage point. ETA, 12 seconds. And that's the sharpshooters, kept thinking the Yondaime. I have a name, do you know that? Masahiro said in an even and neutral tone. Radar man, keep your radio discipline, reprimanded one of the weapon throwers. At that, Minato blinked, confused. Radar man? He whispered to Fugaku. He asked to be able to choose his own codename for the communications. I made the error of saying yes, groaned the Uchiha leader. What about the Anbu scout teams? Asked Minato after a small pause. He was sitting on a crate abandoned who knows how many time ago in an alley of the village. He'd been awake by less than an hour, and had received less than 10 minutes ago his unexpected orders, a solo mission for a joint operation, right in the middle of Konoha. Infiltrate a building that didn't exist until this morning, of all things. Didn't even have the time to shave properly, he thought, as he passed one of his gloved hands on his stubble-covered chin while he inspected for one last time his equipment. His mask was in his other hand, ready to be worn. He checked his armor's harness, to be sure it would not make noise as he entered the mysterious apartment. Checking his pouches one last time, he made sure to have all the necessary gear he needed. Unlike most Anbu operatives, he didn't carry a sword. He didn't need it. He perked his head as his auricular came to life, hearing the other scout teams reporting in. This is Flock, we are ready. He raised his mask, examining it. Some people said that he should feel honored to not only be a member of Konoha's elite, but also the man with the same mask and codename that once belonged to one of the three Sannin, the strongest shinobi the village had produced since the time of the Shodai Hokage. This is Pack, ETA to position, 20 seconds. Complete bullshit. At least in his opinion. Anbu were black ops, carrying the most dangerous, lethal and sometimes questionable missions for the village's sake. All the masks had been soiled by blood long time ago, by different owners. Being used by one of the greatest of Konoha's shinobi to ever live didn't make a difference in his view, especially because he knew that the Sannin was much less heroic than most people believed him to be. The fact that some people in Anbu believed him to be an apprentice of Orochimaru because of the codename didn't help at all. He got up, wearing the white, pristine mask. It was the first time he had to sneak into a place located inside his own village. But having a task helped him to not think too much about how the strange building could have materialized itself. Also, a part of him that he hated loved the idea of entering the battlefield once again. This is Snake, he spoke in his mic. I'm heading to the rooftop. ETA, 10 seconds. As he said that, he disappeared with a shunshin. All teams have reported, sir. Ready to engage. Minato realized that everyone's attention was on him. In the few months since he was appointed Hokage, this was the first major operation done by all of Konoha's forces. Even if it was a bizarre one, it still required his direct order as the highest-ranking shinobi in the mission area. Proceed. Send in the Anbu, ordered the Yondaime Hokage, not permitting to any trace of hesitation seep through his voice's tone. As the order was given, a hole started forming on one of the building's walls on the ground floor, like the wall was melting. When the hole was wide enough, 3 figures darted inside the room one at a time, landing in a fan formation. Konoha's elite shinobi, clad in dark vests and wearing white armor and animal-shaped masks to conceal their identity. Anbu. Once they verified that no one was inside except for them as Masahiro told them when the entry point was chosen, one of them closed the hole with a simple earth jutsu, leaving the wall in pristine conditions. Pack team is in, muttered the team leader into his earpiece, that was donned under the mask. Roger that, responded the Uchiha's sensor voice. You should be clear. No targets on your floor. Stay sharp for any traps, though. I can't sense those. Signaling his subordinates to spread and inspect the floor, the team leader started mapping mentally the place as they advanced. This place was huge, almost bigger than the hospital. It certainly was higher, since it was 5 stories high. It seemed just like any normal ground floor, of any other apartment complex made for civilian use. They passed through quite a number of flats, each composed of a varying number of rooms, bathroom included. They didn't find a single closed door. The only place with some furniture were the bathrooms, and even there it was just toilets and showers. Or bathtubs. Odd. If they can just materialize an entire building inside an hidden village, why leave it empty? And why only have a handful of people instead of an entire invasion force? And why leave an entire floor empty of equipment? He thought, before reporting in and giving a map of the ground floor to the riot teams. Flashback. Wait, said Kiba. Are you saying that this whole place is empty? Yep. Confirmed Naruto. It's brand new. They finished the work a few weeks ago, and nobody's bought an apartment yet. Even the smaller ones on the lower floors are too expensive. Yeah, well, when they sell them, you'll have a lot of rich and snob neighbors. How does that sound? Said Sasuke. Naruto flinched at that. I really hope not. Anyway, he continued, putting a hand on Kiba's shoulder and getting close, with a conspiratory air. Since it's empty, we have an entire building all for us. We can party everywhere. We'll not disturb anyone. Kiba and Sasuke blinked at that. Then they realized the implications. A pair of identically idiotic grins spread on their faces. A similar scene was happening on the first floor. A hole formed on the wall and the second team entered the building. The difference was that, unlike the pack team, this group didn't enter in an empty room. Thanks to a very cruel coincidence, it was the younger and more inexperienced of the team, Canary, who discovered this. By landing on some objects scattered around the floor, tripping and crushing several of them in a cacophony of broken glass before finding his balance again. This gained him the angry gazes of his teammates. Even if he could only see the black holes of their mask, he knew they were pissed. Especially the squad leader. He lowered his head in shame. Flock team is in, muttered the team leader. That's good. There are at least 2 contacts on your floor, so be careful. The involuntarily clumsy Anbu slumped his shoulders. He knew that if they survived this mission, he would receive a very fiery reprimand. Maybe with a fire jutsu or 2 thrown in, just for kicks. And then, and only then, he could worry about remaining in Anbu after such a mess up during his first mission. He looked around. If his career had to go down, he wanted at least to know what he had to blame and swear revenge against it. Sake bottles. The floor was partly covered with empty sake bottles, and some empty crates. Why there so many sake bottles here, thought Canary. Flashback. The boys started carrying the crates to the last floor. More were waiting on the street, guarded fiercely by Sakura and Ino. After all the work they had to do to get them, they didn't want somebody to swipe some of their booze. How come those 2 were able to find such a big alcohol stash? Asked Shikamaru. Sakura told me that it took years for them to stock such a big amount. Responded Naruto. What? Years? Why did they amass such a quantity of sake? Did they want to open a bar? No, they wanted to make Tsunade-bachan stop drinking. So they just stole her stash. With Shizen's help, of course. Did it work? Not really. I think Bachan has still a few hiding places they don't know about. Just a question, where did they put all of this sake? Shikamaru was very curious about this. Under Bachan's house. She never thought to look there. Snickered Naruto. Troublesome women. End flashback. The bird-masked Anbu groaned. It seemed that he had just sworn revenge against alcohol. Meaning, he couldn't drink anymore if he got expelled from the Anbu Corps. This day sucked. This is Snake. I'm in. Good. You are on the floor with highest number of unknown contacts. Estimated number between 9 and 12. Should I attempt to neutralize them? Negative. Your primary objective is to gain intelligence on the targets. Avoid conflict unless absolutely necessary. Understood. I'm entering a kitchen area, I think. It was a nice kitchen, with big island in the middle, with lot of space to prepare the food. A pair of stoves were present, along with a coffee maker and lots of other stuff. It was also a mess. Not a mess hall, a mess. There was quite a large pile of plates and pots in the sink, the cabinets looked like they had been raided. There were empty bottles of sake and other liquors everywhere. And this place smelled. Smelled really bad. Flashback. Are you sure it's okay to leave them like this? I feel bad about it. Relax, Choji. Let's just enjoy the dinner you prepared for us. Said Naruto. But it's not. Don't worry, man. Interrupted the energetic, slightly inebriated blonde. I can just do some shadow clones tomorrow to wash the dishes and put all this place in order. Or you could have Sasuke do it for you. Snickered Kiba. Like hell I'll clean this place again. Responded the last Uchiha. I could ask Karen to convince you, muttered Naruto. Hey. End flashback. Opening one of his pouches, Snake extracted his ultra-compact camera and started taking pictures. He didn't know what kind of intelligence HQ could gain on these people by looking at this, but he had his orders and he sent them. Unbeknownst to him, Snake's picture were causing a general sweat dropping to everyone back to the HQ. Seems our intruders are a messy bunch, muttered Minato, looking to the various images just received. Finished transmitting the pictures, Snake moved on. Moving quietly, he opened the door. He found himself in a very big room, realizing immediately that he wasn't alone. On a pair of couches, he could see the blanket-covered shapes of a pair of people. One was quite large and tall. The noise of their snores was a good alert signal, too. Another person, a boy with bowl-cut black hair, was crashed on an improvised music center, his body covered completely by some sheets that someone probably had put on him. Flashback. Hey, Naruto-kun. I was thinking. About what, Hinata-chan? What about Lee? You know what happens if he drinks even a few sips of alcohol. Not a problem, Hinata-chan. Grinned the young blonde. I talked to Tenten about it. We'll make turns to be sure that Lee does not touch the stuff. We've got some soda for him. Also, after dinner he'll be too busy putting music on and dancing. He'll forget about the booze soon enough. Are you sure it will work? Asked the Hyuga heiress, worried. Well, I surely hopes it does. I don't want to have my new home destroyed by one of my friends. He said, laughing. End flashback. They seemed soundly asleep, so he continued examining the room without going near them, not wanting to test his luck. Even here, bottles of liquors were scattered around, and a pair of crates. Most were empty, but a few on the table, still a bit of sake inside. As he was almost on the point of leaving the room to keep searching this floor, when a detail he didn't notice before caught his attention. It was a picture, put at one end of the table. It had a black frame, and a single, undisturbed bottle of sake was standing beside it. Snake's blood froze when he understood what he was seeing. He could recognize those distinctive features anywhere. It was a young male Hyuga, wearing a Konoha head protector. Flock team had reached the 3rd floor, after sending the map of their entry point to the HQ. They were silently advancing in a straight line, moving alongside an hallway. The now doomed to eternal sobriety Canary was closing the line, walking backwards and watching his teammates' backs. Maybe if I do a good job on the rest of the mission, I will not be expelled. That was his thought just before he heard his foot tread on something. In the completely silent building, the otherwise ignorable sound seemed much louder, like it had an echo of his own. Time seemed to freeze before the team was sure nobody heard that. He looked down. His foot was on a small patch of sand. Sand. Why is there sand here? He thought frantically as he turned to watch his team. They were looking at him, their expressionless masks hiding their disapproval. The body language of his team leader was speaking volumes about his future. The commander will have me eat my mask in front of everyone, before expelling me out of the ANBU headquarters with a kick in the butt. I'll spend my days guarding the village gates, I just know it, he inwardly despaired, his last hope to save his career in shambles. Canary really wanted to cry. Gara snapped open his eyes. And immediately regretted doing it. He groaned, unable to emit any coherent sound. His head hurt really, really bad. He had a terrible taste in his mouth, and the faint light in the sand-filled room was blinding him. Wait, sand-filled room? Rising a little his head, he verified that he was, indeed, lying down in a sand-filled room he was not familiar with. How did I get here? He thought, having to do a strain hard to elaborate the thought. He tried to move, great wind, his head hurt so much, and it was then that he noticed that his arm was trapped under something, soft. Partially turning on his left flank, he found himself staring at the back of Matsuri's head. And her naked spine. Wah, he half thought, trying to remember through the pain what occurred last night. It was also the moment he realized he was missing his clothes. Oh, was the only rational thing his mind could produce as he remembered certain details of the last night, while his eyes widened and he blushed a little. And for him even a little was very, very much. Apart from those memories, he could now start to remember how the Welcome Backs party went out of control. Flashback. I hereby announce the beginning of the first Bijujin Chiriki Tag Team Arm Wrestling Tournament. shouted an happy and slightly tipsy Sakura. Thanks to her medical jutsu, the Pinkette was able to let the others, and herself, drink much more alcohol than normal without, well, dying of alcohol poisoning. A lot of alcohol was consumed, except on Lee's part, who was monitored by everyone to avoid another accident like that time at the steakhouse. Remember now, only one tail, said Sakura. It's not a tournament if there are only 2 contestants, muttered Sasuke, pouting. Oh, come on, team. You're jealous just because you can't participate. My Susanoo would win for sure, dope. Well, too bad your Susanoo is not a bijou, right? Snickered Naruto. Are you ready, Tanuki boy? He asked to Gara, who was sitting at the other side of the table, right in front of him. Ready when you're, Foxy, responded Gara in his usual neutral tone. At that, a chorus of oohoo raised between all of the party's participants. That had only the effect of pumping up Naruto's competitive spirit. You're on, Mr. Kazekage. Come on, Kurama, shouted Naruto, forming a single tail of chakra, that quickly assumed the form of a giant hand. Let's go, Shikaku, whispered Gara. His sand started leaving his gourd, shaping itself as a thick paw that surrounded his own arm. The 2 Jinchuriki grabbed each other's hand and waited for the signal, their gaze never leaving their opponent's eyes. Begin. End flashback. When Shikaku asked to be sealed inside him once again, after the end of the war, Gara never thought they would fight together in something like that. Did we win? He asked to the Ichibi. Oh. You woke up. More or less. My head hurts really bad, though. Could you? Way ahead of you, said the bijou, infusing his chakra on his host's body. Gara could already feel the headache quite down a bit. Thanking Shikaku mentally, he started to get up, fumbling around to avoid falling on his butt. It was not a dignified sight, for a Kage. Once he was stable on his feet, he gently covered Matsuri's form with a blanket formed by solidified sand. All right. That is done, he thought, looking around the room that right now resembled Suna's desert. Now, where are my pants? The last set of pictures sent by Snake caused quite a racket back at the HQ. People were gasping, people were shouting. Nobody seemed to know the Hyuga, though. People were asking for an identification, believing him to be a target of the intruders. Other people asked the same thing, but to capture him, saying he could be a mole. Minato, for his part, was questioning himself about something. Why a group of intruders would celebrate so much, when they infiltrated so successfully, yet so poorly. After all, they were able to put an entire building inside Konoha's gates without anyone noticing how they did it. On the other hand, they put an entire building inside Konoha's gates. Surely they thought that an hidden village as a whole would have noticed an extra building, right? Since he could not find an answer for that, he was forced to deal with the elephant in the room. As Fugaku was busy calming down his more loud officers, he approached the ANBU commander. Is he really a Hyuga? He whispered, avoiding anyone hearing their conversation. The commander slowly nodded. The eyes and other features are presents, but I don't know him. Also, the picture could be a well-made fake. Now, that was a good question. Was the picture a fake? Minato's musings were interrupted when he heard Shikaku's voice. It's a commemorative altar. What did you say? Asked the Hokage. The picture's frame is black, meaning some kind of grief toward the subject of the picture. So our unknown Hyuga is likely dead. It is located at one of the table's heads, so it was placed in a seat of honor. Quite, a lot of consumed sake bottles were found, on almost all of the building's floors. But that one, beside the picture, was left untouched. So, it is some kind of offering to that shinobi, a way to honor his memory. Shikaku paused when he realized the strange looks everyone was giving him. Don't look at me like that. I don't know why they honored his memory. I'm just explaining a deduction based on the facts in our. Some of the targets are awakening. Snake, 2 are in the same room you're in. Hide. Masahiro said in almost a shout, interrupting Shikaku's explanation. Everybody held their breath, their eyes focused on Masahiro. If the intruders were waking up, the operation was getting more dangerous. I hear someone speaking, said one of the radio operators. It is Snake. Asked Shikaku. No. It's one of the intruders, sir. Put it on the speakers. Turn off all your microphones. Start recording. Ordered Fugaku. The room grew even quieter as everyone was wondering what the intruder would speak about. Did they find Snake? Had they captured him? At a night? I feel like Kiba punched me in tandem with Akamaru. Groaned an unknown voice. What? Whispered Minato, slightly confused. He wasn't expecting a phrase like that. What mic are they talking into? Asked Shikaku. You, too bright. Snakes 1, sir. He turned on his mic just a few seconds ago, responded an operator. The room was immediately full of agitated whispers once again. Shush! Ordered Fugaku. This is invaluable intelligence. Shut up unless necessary. Yeah, we really overdid it, said another voice, this one almost toneless and not in pain. Where are they, Masahiro? Are they close to Snake? After a second, the Uchiha censor replied. They're, right beside him. I don't know how they can't see him. Sigh. How come you don't have hangover? Hangover, thought Minato, incredulous. Well, I suppose they had to do something with all that sake, but seriously, I do have hangover. Terrible one, also. But I'm able to resist the pain. I see. You're root training, right? At that, everyone in the room gasped. Root? Danzo's old shadow group. This is grave news. If one of his agents are in there, he knows what's going on for sure. Once we've captured the building's occupants, better call in the Sandaime to assist in the investigations. Sarutobi Hiruzen, the retired Sandaime Hokage, the god of shinobi, sneezed as he was enjoying the sunny morning on his porch and sipping a nice tea his beloved wife made for him. He groaned, seeing his stained pants and the empty cup. Biwako, dear. Could you please bring me a handkerchief? And put a new kettle on the fire? Thank you. Minato's eyes met those of the high-ranking shinobi in the room. They all knew how serious this was. But there was so much they didn't know. Was it a conspiracy? Was Danzo making his move on the title of Hokage since Minato was considered too young and inexperienced by some of Konoha's shinobi? An internal section of the Hyuga clan, perhaps? Maybe the branch family, unhappy with their condition of servitude, punished at a whim of the main house? Or was he collaborating with some external power? He knew that Danzo would never betray Konoha, or, to be fair, his own vision of what Konoha should be. But Minato knew that Danzo was a dangerous and cunning enemy, and who knew what the crippled shinobi would do to fulfill his ambitions. Come on, Sai. Let's wake up the others, we must prepare to. After that, the voice started fading until it disappeared. They're gone, Snake. Good job. Said Masahiro into his microphone, smiling. How did you manage to stay hidden? A jutsu. You should know I'm a professional, radar man. Like hell I'm going to tell them I avoided being spotted by hiding in one of these empty boxes, thought the professional infiltrator. Pack team was on the 4th floor just a few minutes later, and they'd already had some close calls where the intruders almost spotted them. It seemed that whatever backlash the just they'd used it was wearing down. The team leader signaled with his hand to stop when they heard a female voice shouting just behind the corner. Something about the water not running anymore in the bathroom. Weird. Still using hand signals, he guided his men in an empty room, thanks to Masahiro telling him the locations of the awakening intruders by radio. They entered in a decently sized loft, located in the center of the 4th floor. The room was devoid of human presence, but that didn't mean it was empty. When they saw what was on the wooden floor, they stopped in their tracks. At the very center of the room, on the wooden floor, was a giant symbol painted with an unidentifiable ink. The team leader recognized it as some kind of seal, a product of Fuinjutsu arts. It was shaped like a big spiral, surrounded by different seals of unknown purpose. At random intervals there were other spirals growing up from the main seal, and more symbols were painted around them. Also it was moving, rotating on itself slowly but surely. That was not good. The team leader was not a seal master, but he knew how to create his own explosive tags and storage scrolls. A seal was not supposed to move and shift its form like that. If it was an unstable, potentially dangerous seal. And that was just when a small seal was made wrong. An unstable seal of this magnitude. It was bad. Really, really bad. He had to report this to the Hokage immediately. He was so shocked by his discovery that he almost didn't hear Masahiro warnings in time. Sensing a presence behind them, they turned, unsheathing their weapons and taking a battle formation. A young blonde was trudging down the hallway, apparently unsure on his feet. His face was a mask of pain and he seemed to ignore the Anbu as he passed in front of them. He almost resembled the Yondaime. The team leader was almost on the point of giving the order to attack and restrain him, but the blonde turned his head towards them, waving with his hand. Hey guys. Tell Bachan I'll see her soon, okay? Bathroom first. His voice was very coarse, too. Ignoring them after that, he kept strolling along the hallway. At that, the team leader was really confused. He gave the signal for retreat. HQ, HQ, he called in his mic. This is HQ, Speak Pack Team. We found something and, he paused, unsure how to continue. Did Hokage-sama enter the building? There were a pair of seconds of silence on his earpiece. No, he's here. Why? Then we were just spotted. Chapter 4. Then we were just spotted. Beside him, Minato could just feel Fugaku and the commander's reactions. Fugaku was probably smirking, thinking how the ANBU had failed their silent recon. He heard the almost inaudible sigh that escaped the ANBU leader's lips, behind his white mask. He could swear that the two rivals were keeping score, or something. Our cover is blown. Send in the riot teams, he sighed. That was surely going to inflate the Uchiha clan head's ego, even if it was part of Shikaku's plan. With pleasure, Hokage-sama, said Fugaku, in a not-so-stoic tone that only confirmed Minato's worries. Note to self, really find a way to improve the situation with the Uchiha clan's isolation. Maybe interacting with the village they'll get better, thought the blonde Hokage. All riot teams, breach and storm in 10 seconds. Repeat, breach and storm in 10 seconds, said Fugaku's voice on the radio. Blaze team, a target is just on the other side of your entry point. Expect immediate resistance, added Masahiro's voice. They were inside on the apartments what were partially eaten by the building when it mysteriously appeared. The peach-colored wall was in front of them, the dining room they were standing in cut almost evenly in half. Understood, sir. We're going in, confirmed in his earpiece the leader of Blaze team, signaling to his closest subordinate to proceed. The Uchiha quickly planted a specialized explosive tag on the wall as the others leaned to the side of it, away from the blast zone. Once he was done, he joined them and at the last of the 10 seconds, he set off the tag. The explosive did its job, tearing a passage through the wall and raising a cloud of debris and dust. Blaze team stormed in, ready to take out the intruder quickly with their superior numbers and the element of surprise. At least, that was the plan. Instead, they stopped dead in their tracks once they got inside, surprised by the sight in front of them. They had breached the wall of a luxurious bathroom, a little barren of furniture but still luxurious anyway. In front of them stood a dark-haired beauty, practically naked, who had been busy trying to make the shower work until they'd blown up the wall. She stood there, hands still on the not-functioning shower valve, eyes wide like a deer caught in the headlights. Wait, her eyes. She's a Hyuga. Why is a Hyuga here, and, is Asuko bleeding from the nose? Nobody moved for several seconds, even when the echoes of the other team's blazing entries reached them. Then the girl finally reacted how any girl caught like that in front of 5 unknown males would have done. She started screaming. The fire team was in even before the rubble started settling on the floor. Running between the empty rooms, the team leader wanted to use the advantage of surprise before the enemy could react and organize a defense. They stopped only to open each door, leaving quickly once the room were called clear. Nobody's here. Masahiro told us there were lots of chakra signatures on this floor. Where are they? The next door was opened by the impatient team leader with a kick so strong that it flew off its hinges. The team entered like before, weapons in hand, only to be greeted by what was probably the opposite of a prepared enemy ready for a fight. Knelt by the side of a toilet was a young man with brown, spiky hair, who was sporting the marks of the Inuzuka clan on his face. And he was puking his guts out. What? An Inuzuka here dash. The team leader stopped, as did his men. Not in surprise, but because they were assaulted by the stench of the kid's vomit. If the boy really was an Inuzuka, he didn't want to imagine how terrible the smell was for him. The hopefully for him not an Inuzuka barfed one last time, taking a few deep breaths to calm himself down. It was then that he noticed someone else was in the bathroom. He turned his head wobbling, still kneeling by the toilet, and saw them. Who the fuck are you guys? He said in a suffering tone. It was then that another whiff of the foul smell assaulted the nostrils of the team. All of them made disgusted faces and noises. A couple of them even fled the room, breaking squad discipline. Seemingly offended by this reaction, the teen shouted in their direction. Hey! I was sick, assholes. The radio channels were suddenly filled with chatter as the riot teams started their assault on the building. Minato, Fugaku, the commander and Shikaku were listening attentively, hoping that everything went according to plan. Everyone flinched in pain as their eardrums were assaulted by a loud undignified shriek from the speakers. Blaze team, here. We came in contact with one of the targets. It's a Hyuga girl and, get out, get out. Screamed a female voice, presumably said Hyuga girl. So at least a Hyuga is involved. But why, thought Minato, glancing at the ANBU leader, and why is she screaming like that? Suddenly other screams and sounds of a fight were heard from the speakers, along with some pained moans. Too many noises to be a good thing. Blaze team. What's happening? Asked Fugaku, worried about his men. She jukened my balls. She jukened my bowels. Was heard all over the room. All the present males, and even some of the women, winced at that. Even the stoic ANBU commander. Not really an application of the gentle fist, they wanted to imagine. Sounds of another fight could be heard on another squad's channel. An unknown, brash voice spoke. You guys are really assholes, you know. Attacking me like that for no reason. Can't you see I'm... The voice stopped, and instead a disgusting sound could be heard, along with laments about the smell made by the members of Fire Team. Ugh. I feel much better, now, said the same voice in a low tone, before speaking again. Now, who's first? As the signal for the attack was given to the police force riot teams, the ANBU scout teams moved to support them, coordinating each other's efforts thanks to a private channel. Meaning, running like hell and trying to knock out more intruders than the Uchiha. Losers had to buy dinner. Not that the Hokage needed to know that. Masahiro was strangely neutral about the whole thing, not really caring and giving instructions to every team. He seemed entertained by the whole idea and wished he had popcorn. Not that the ANBU and police teams knew that. Flock team was still on the third floor and was moving quickly to the location of a pair of targets. One of them is unconscious, but the other one is moving frantically. And he seems powerful. His chakra signature is becoming stronger as we speak. Proceed with caution. The team leader gave the signal to speed up, and the flock team burst inside the room Masahiro had guided them to, literally jumping through the door. They entered ready for a fight. Attack the targets, stun them, secure them and rub it in the police force's faces. Their room seemed like a beach surrounded by four walls. Or a desert. So here's where the sand came from, thought Canary mid-jump. Why do they have a room full of sand, anyway? In the middle of the room were two figures. A supine one who was covered only by sand, and a young man with red hair who was wearing only a pair of boxers, showing his back to them. The redhead was gesturing and the sand around the room seemed to shift at his will. I know they're here somewhere, muttered the young man in a toneless voice, still not facing them. Without hesitation, the three ANBU charged him, running on the sandy floor. As soon as they were in arm's reach, the sand around the teen rose, shoving away the three surprised shinobi. Only then did the teen, as the boxer-wearing man revealed himself to be, turn to face them with a blank expression. Canary flipped in mid-air, using the momentum of the push he received to land gracefully, on something that was crushed under his feet. A loud cracking noise echoed in the sand-filled room. The teen's eyes widened, his entire body flinching like he was struck, personally. What's wrong with me and stuff under my feet? Toda dash, thought Canary, glancing down, not noticing the redhead's reaction. His train of thoughts about his unlucky day stopped when he saw what he'd stomped on this time. He had landed on a pile of clothes and robes, the only missing piece seemed to be a pair of pants. On the top of the pile, and under his feet, was now a clearly broken Kage hat. A Kage hat with the kanji for wind on it. Feeling the almost naked shinobi's gaze on him, Canary looked up. Now that he could see the boy's face, he resembled the pictures he'd saw of the Kazekage. But it couldn't be him, he was too young, and the Yondaime Kazekage didn't have that tattoo on his. Is his eye twitching? Yes, the boy's left eye was definitely twitching. He didn't move, but all the sand in the room started to swirl, like if moved by an hurricane. Canary couldn't do anything, except ask himself what he did wrong to deserve a day like this. Chaos. Utter uncontrolled chaos seemed to have exploded inside the building. The confused pieces of radio chatter weren't that helpful to put together a clear picture. This is Senbon 1, target in sight. Engaging, reported one of the sharpshooters. This is fire, we request assistance on the second floor. We made contact with an intruder, he's a, hey Kiba, what's going on more on our 6. Great fireball jutsu. From the sound of fighting, jutsu being shouted and the sounds of explosions, it seemed that the plan for quick assault on easy, unconscious targets had gone down the toilet. No good. We need to stop this, fast, thought the yondaime, wondering if he should intervene personally. He knew that Fugaku and the commander would not appreciate it, but, what's the big deal? Can't a guy take a leak in peace, Databeo? Screamed an angry and brash voice from the radio. Databeo? Muttered a very confused Minato. The ANBU commander was frowning. Not that anyone knew, thanks to the mask. If a Hyuga was inside there, able to use the Juken, then picture was not a fake. But the one pictured in the photo frame was male. If a female one was also present, in flesh and blood and not a picture, that raised a lot of questions. Were they traitors? Was there a plot to help some of the village's enemies? Or were they, born outside the village? Maybe a Hyuga on a mission got drunk and, he stopped that train of thought. He needed facts, not crazy theories about long-lost children. He approached Masahiro, who was still concentrating on the building. I need to know one thing, Uchiha-san. Just 1 second, hey watch out, Pyre team. You're heading straight to, Wadash. Sand. Here, hey, you. Surrender now and, sand-binding prison, stated a cold and monotone voice. Then everything went to static. Oh great. Well it seems they're still alive, at least, muttered Masahiro now, how can I help you, Commander? The Hyuga girl. Where is she? Oh, it's about that. No sense wasting time, then. Replied the Uchiha, closing his eyes again. The commander watched in silence as the sensor concentrated. She's still on the floor where she fought the Blaze team. But she's moving, fast, to the west side of the building. I see. Thank you. Said the commander. He changed the channel of his personal radio as he walked to a more secluded part of the Aresawa's residence. Snake, this is the commander. What's your position? Whispered the ANBU leader. Commander, I'm on the 3rd floor, moving to support. Negative. You have a new mission. You must find one of the intruders. Yes sir. I see. Snake, she's a Hyuga. What? I know. You must capture her alive. Understood? We need answers. Of course, sir. After all, I'm the right man for the job, right? Indeed. Ino was not having a good morning. Unlike last night's party. The party had been fun, it had been crazy, she was not sure about much else. Because the last clear memory she had was about being offered a sake bottle by someone. After she'd already drunk quite a bit. She could check with her family's techniques later, maybe. Right now she was ravaged by a terrible headache, plus all the classic hangover package. She had tried to ease the pain with some medical jutsu, but she was not as skilled as Sakura. Also she had other more dire matters at hand. Like those pricks who had her pinned behind one of the sake's crates, did they really get so much of the stuff? Shooting senbon and shuriken at her through the windows. Echoes of people fighting reached her ears, seemingly from every direction. What the hell? Is the village under attack? Where's everyone? She thought. She got there to dive for cover on reflex when she heard the weapons breaking the glass. Now she was stuck because they wouldn't let her leave, and she was without weapons. None of the party participants had them. It was her fault actually. She'd created the no weapons at a party rule after the drunk 1010 incident of 2 years ago, and everybody agreed. Now it was biting her in her pretty ass. She had no idea who would attack the village right now, after all the peace talks. Ino doubted the others were in any better condition than she was. The only weapons she could use, were the ones stuck in her wooden shelter. Deciding that she needed something to defend herself, she tried to reach for some senbon or shuriken, only to have her hand grazed by what seemed to be a warning throw. This is no good. I gotta go away from here, maybe if I just moved the crate like a shield, I could. Her lines of thought was interrupted when she felt a presence approaching her position. Snapping her head in that direction, she felt some relief seeing 1010 running towards her instead of some of these mysterious attackers. The weapon specialist looked like shit, but Ino was sure she did too. Then her eyes widened as she realized that the girl was about to run into the line of fire. Ino, what's going on? Who's fighting? Called the bun-haired girl. 1010, Stop. There's a weapons thrower somewhere outside. Screamed Ino, gesturing with her hand. Hearing that, Tenten skid to an halt, glancing to the windows in front of her and the various weapons stuck in the crate. She had stopped barely in time to avoid running right into harm's way. The weapon enthusiast girl just watched the weapons and the window for a second or two, before searching for something to use for her purpose. She found it. Ino, pass me one of those. She instructed the younger girl. What? Are you serious? Throw me one if you want to get out of here. Yelled the bun girl. Senbon won. Ruka was ready to strike, Senbon in hand. From the top of the cable pole she was on, she could clearly see the crate the girls was using as pathetic cover. If the girl tried to move out of her safe haven, she would pepper her with Senbon. Only non-vital areas, of course. She had orders to capture her targets alive, and orders were orders. The only problem was that to trap the girl there, she was running low on weapons. She couldn't keep her there indefinitely. Seemed her little game was over, then. She pressed her mic button. Senbon won here. I have a target pinned, but can't get a clear shot. Send a team to restrain her on the. She didn't finish before something collided with her face, hard, knocking her out and sending her unconscious form falling inside a waste bin that was right under the pole. Got him, said Tenten, like it was nothing. What Ash? How? You didn't know his position. And you used a bottle. Said Ino as she emerged from behind her hiding spot. Well, I am the best weapons specialist in Konoha. Besides, I just watched the weapons angle to understand the direction they were thrown. Even if she obviously in pain for the hungover and the bags under her eyes, Tenten managed to actually sound smugly. You're awesome. I know, said Tenten, as she started collecting the various weapons. No kunai. Senbon 1 is down, said Masahiro, who was almost overwhelmed between the double task of coordinating the teams inside the building and informing his superiors about what was happening. She fell? Asked Fugaku, with a saddened tone. Ruka was among his best marksmen, a prodigy with long-range combat. She would be missed. If they got her, then the enemy had talented long-range fighters too. Yeah, right in the middle of the trash. I don't envy her, deadpanned Masahiro, ignoring Fugaku's sputtering and keeping the teams posted. Guys. Did you saw the sand guy? Yay, avoid him. Really. From the riot team's open channels they could still hear their mysterious intruders. Most of what they said didn't make sense at all. How come the Hokage hasn't sent anyone yet? Yelled a feminine voice. But, I did, thought Minato, sweat dropping. Who are these people? Don't know, ugh. Sakura. Karen. Could someone please heal me? My head's killing me. So they had medics to tend their wounded. They sure are organized. Hey, team. This one looks a little like you. Don't you think? It was the brash voice, the one who said Databeo. Minato was still confused about that. Don't be ridiculous, Dobe. He doesn't look like me at all, responded another voice, a colder one. How come no one is coming to help us? We're right in the middle of Konoha. An attack would have been noticed, said another voice, who seemed quite frustrated. Not frustrated like Minato. That question didn't make any sense. Maybe the enemies were trying to confound them. Maybe we aren't the only ones being attacked. Let's hope Tsunade-Bachan can handle this on her own until we go save her ass. Tsunade-Bachan. Someone help me wake up Lee. He's still out. Said the female again. Holy shit, they have the Sharingan. Shouted the brash one suddenly. They have what? Asked the cold one, losing his coolness. You, what's happening? I think I was much too youthful last night, said another voice. This one was new, and a little raspy. How dare you steal the Uchiha clan's eyes? Screamed the not-so-cold-anymore voice in fury. Minato was very confused now. He was keeping a calm and collected exterior, but inwardly he just wanted to put his hands on his hair and start begging the world to make sense again. He was not the only one, judging by Fugaku's widened eyes and offended expression. They almost didn't hear the raspy voice, since they were just too shocked by the nonsensical things these people were saying. Almost. I think I need to drink something. No. Lee. Don't drink that. Half of the top floor's front wall exploded. Finished his delightful tea, Sarutobi Hiruzen was still sitting on his porch, smoking his pipe happily. Retirement is good, indeed. No more responsibilities, no more paperwork, no more. An explosion in the outskirts of the village interrupted his happy monologue. Whatever was happening there seemed to having grown out of control. He was sure Minato could handle it just fine. Minato was the Hokage, after all. He was retired. But, the village could be in danger. He sighed, rising slowly. Old habits died hard. Biwako, dear. Could you please prepare my battle gear for me? Silence reigned in the HQ. The only one who didn't seem shocked about the sudden and unexpected destruction was Masahiro, who was drinking his new cup of coffee. Fugaku-san, said Minato, breaking the eerie silence, alert all of our shinobi, even the reserves. Isolate the area completely. Evacuate the civilians to the bunkers. All Anbu, storm the building. Uchiha, form a defensive line. Check if Jiraiya-sensei is still in the village, try by the bathhouses. Call Orochimaru, he's probably inside his lab. Also, search for Kush. He stopped for half a second. Almost slipped there. For Uzumaki-san and our other best fighters. Then I want you and the commander to join me. Join you? I'm going in, said the Yondaime Hokage, watching the smoking hole on the face of the building with narrowed eyes. That's it for part 1. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.